Hey, Leafs fam, hockey world, what's going on? This is the Leafs Convo podcast. I'm Norman James, your host. Thanks for being aboard for this episode. It's going to be terrific. It's an Ask Mike special. You have Leafs Qs, we have your Leafs As. We're also talking Freddie Gauthier, the search for defensive help for the Leafs. Will it happen through the trade market or the FA market? We have some ideas. There's Tavares and Matthews on the ice together. Let's gin up some rivalry narrative, right? Or is it just two young, hungry, talented, tenacious athletes wanting to win a Stanley Cup and knowing they have a better chance of doing so together on this Maple Leafs club? I think it's the latter. Before we continue on, I want you to do this right now. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at this moment. Once we hit 1,000 subscribers, we're not capping anything, but those 1,000 subs will be entered into a draw to win one of 10 Leafs Convo shirts, courtesy of TLC Apparel. Are you down with all that? I'm ready to pod. Mike's ready to pod. Are you ready to pod? The Leafs Convo starts right now. And here is our friend, Mike Augello, smack dab in the world's capital, Cheektowaga, New York. Hello, sir.
Good morning, Norman. Yes, the center of the universe, Buffalo and Western New York. Although, I do believe it for Blue Jays fans, it will be the center of the universe for the next little while when Vladimir Guerrero, the Blue Jays' top prospect, gets promoted to AAA. It's going to be pretty exciting to see, a guy who could be the linchpin cornerstone of the Blue Jays franchise take the next level and eventually get to Toronto probably later this year or early next year.
Yeah, there are videos all over YouTube that demonstrate Vlad Guerrero Jr.'s immense hitting power. The guy absolutely crushes baseballs. And whether you're a Blue Jays fan or a Blue Jays loather, there has to be some curiosity there. You want to see what you're probably hearing from outside of the stadium.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I was a fan of his father, and if he's a chip off the Jays have a really great player, and it's funny because specialize in second generation players because Bo Bichette and Craig Biggio's son are also prospects in the organization and sound like they'll eventually get to the major leagues. So but Guerrero, I mean, if he's anything like his dad in terms of being somebody who you couldn't pitch to, even if it was a bad pitch, he would hit it out of the park. So I mean that'll be pretty exciting.
I've seen Vlad Guerrero Sr. hit doubles off the wall on pitches that bounced in the dirt. And I've from the warning track, pick up a ball and one hop into the home plate at about 96 miles an hour. So if Vlad Jr. has an ounce of the talent his old man showed the baseball world for about 15 to 20 years, Blue Jays fans are going to be in for a lot of fun, and people who don't like the Blue Jays are going to be in for a lot of hectic and hair-raising times because it's going to be really interesting stuff. Real quick before we get into our hockey talk, Jay Happ is probably the top pitcher on the Blue Jays right now, 20-game winner in 2016. The Yankees look like they're interested in him. Do they part with someone like Clint Frazier, not a key prospect in the organization, but one that has value for a guy that may only pitch for the Yankees for 60 days?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think the Blue Jays, the Yankees definitely are interested in adding pitching, and Happ's name has been out there, and they have a plethora of prospects, but I don't think for a pure rental, because it doesn't sound like Happ is going to that they're interested in signing Happ or having him past the rest of this year. I don't think that, Clint Frazier in other organizations would be their top prospect. They have probably two or three ahead of him, but that doesn't mean that they want to sort of give him away for a pitcher that, as you said, they'll have for 2 months. So I think it'll probably be a lesser prospect. And, there may be a bidding war for other teams because pitching is valuable, but I don't think that they would move Frazier for Happ. I'd be surprised.
Brian Cashman running the Yankees as general manager now is not the same Brian Cashman who ran the Yankees 15 years ago, right, Mike? I mean, whether you have all the money in the world, prospects and player assets are actually more important than money, so you have to manage them properly. Last word on baseball, and we'll get into hockey.
Yeah, I mean, and the talk right now about Manny Machado going to the Yankees, I mean, it's
what would that cost?
Well, and that's the thing. They're basically bound and determined to stay under a certain money amount this year to get away from the highest level of the luxury tax. So I don't know whether they can actually do that without, probably trading away a Jacoby Ellsbury's contract or something like that. I mean, it's bizarre. All I can say is this: the Blue Jays, with the future that they have, it's going to take them probably 2, 3, maybe 4 years at most to get back to that level. But right now, it's not like the Red Sox and the Yankees are going out there and they have a 30-year-old players who are. They're developing their own players, and it's going to be a really tough task in the AL East for anybody other than the Red Sox and the Yankees.
Well, Cashman also wants to be careful too, right? I mean, you pay a king's ransom to get Manny Machado, whether it's going to be for a temporary period or they get him signed up long term. You don't want to have 5 or 6 prospects you parted with to get this wonderful player terrorizing you in the division known as the AL Beast for years to come. The AL East is an absolute juggernaut, Mike. I mean, when it's not the Red Sox or Yankees, it was the Blue Jays for a couple of years. And that's the thing. We talked about this in hockey terms, too. If you're the Ottawa Senators, do you want Erik Karlsson wearing a Maple Leaf jersey for the next 6-7 years, destroying you even more than you are typically destroyed when the Maple Leafs enter Canada and beat your ass, right? So the long-term implications have to be thought out extremely thoroughly, especially when you're dealing within the division. Speaking of tough divisions, the Atlantic Division is going to be a lot of fun this coming season too. Mike, we'll put MLB Convo on hold. Let's get back to Leafs Convo. We know we're going to have some people bitching and moaning in the comment section, but too bad it's our podcast, and you'll love it. Freddie Gauthier, 2-year deal. With the Maple Leafs. It's a 2-way contract. He'll make big dollars if he stays in the N. He'll make really nice dollars compared to what we make if he's in the A, but not nearly as much as an NHL contract. Is this a piss or get off the pot kind of situation, or do you think Freddie Gauthier's kind of resigned himself to the fact that he is going to be a career AHLer with this organization, and when he gets his opportunity, he's going to have to make the most of them?
Well, I don't think he's resigned himself, but I think, in a way, I think the Maple Leaf organization. I mean, he's organizational depth. They know he's a good guy. They know he can play in the NHL. But I got the feeling last year when he had that 9-game window. I think it was in January when, and we know that Babcock wasn't the biggest fan of Dominic Moore, and he tried to give Dominic Moore's job away to Eric Fehr, and that didn't work. And then Moore played pretty well, and then they called up Gauthier, and like I said, I think it was early January. They played him 9 games straight, and he had an assist in 9 games, which they didn't want him to score. But Babcock wanted him to use his 6'5", 230-pound frame to wear on the other team, and he simply didn't do that. And I think that was his last best chance to make the Leafs as their 4th line center. Now there's Par Lindholm and Josh Juris, and they might add somebody else between now and the beginning of training camp. But I think he's quality depth. They rewarded him for the year he had with the Marlies. He scored a big goal for them in double overtime against Syracuse. But I don't think that he's a realistic hope for the Leafs as a 4th line center. I mean, I hope he proves me wrong, but I just don't think it.
This is the Leafs Convo. Norman James along with Mike Jello. Silver Gold ASMR, a new subscriber to the Leafs Convo on YouTube. We're up to 934 subscribers. So if my math is correct, we need 66 more subscribers to reach 1,000. And once we hit the 1,000 mark, I'm going to do a draw with those who have subscribed. The 1,000 subscribers will pick 10 winners, and those 10 winners will get themselves some cool stuff from Leafs Convo apparel. So if you're listening to us right now, thank you for listening, but please subscribe. The amount of people who listen to this podcast but are not subscribed is really disproportionate when balanced out against those who are subscribers and who support us on a daily through their subscription and through their listenership. So let's get more subscribers in here. We want to get to the 1,000 mark. And if you are in before we hit the G note, you'll be entered into the draw to win one of 10 Leafs Combo t-shirts. Mike, great stuff for Sporting News Canada. As always, your latest NHL trade, free agent rumors, 5 defensemen on the Maple Leafs radar. Now, we've spoken about this in recent podcasts, but hey, it's the middle of the summer. We're looking for content, and the Leafs still seem to be looking for some more blue line help. So let's go over it before we get to our Ask Mike segment. Real quick, bullet points. Justin Falk, still a possibility for the Leafs, Mike, to make that happen. What has to happen?
Well, it's all a question of what Carolina is looking for. They're clearly looking to trade Falk. Falk apparently is part of that group that Thomas Dundon, their new owner, wants to move on from. He moved Hannafin, he moved Elias Lindholm, and now with signing Calvin DeHaan, they have 4 defensemen. Their top 4 making close to $20 million, and Falk would probably he would fit in on a third pairing, and paying somebody almost $5 million to play on a third pairing, and he's not a third pairing defenseman, doesn't make any sense. So it's all a question of what Carolina is looking for. If it's something like Kasper Kapanen and a prospect, I think it could get done. The only hesitation I have is that Falk is not exactly the sort of two-way defenseman I think the Leafs really need. He's more of an offensive guy, a power play guy, and they really have that in spades. But I think right now they simply need quality on the back end, and he is a quality defenseman.
Do you need an abundance of players that you already have an abundance of? So Justin Falk, while he is a name and we do love deals, we love trades, at the end of the day, to get rid of somebody like Kasper Kapanen who could have a future with this team, plus another prospect to bring in a player of the same ilk as Jake Gardiner, but not as good as Jake Gardiner, doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Jared Spurgeon from Minnesota.
Now, his situation is tied to the Minnesota cap situation. They have 2 really important restricted free agents in Matt Dumba, who scored 50 points last year, and Jason Zucker, who scored 33 goals, led the team in scoring. They're about $9.5 million under the cap. Spurgeon has 2 years left at a little over $5 million. He scored, I think it was 37 points in 61 games last year. He's a good defenseman. He's only 5'9". He's sort of one of those diminutive Torrey Krug type of defensemen, but he's good skating defenseman, and he would definitely be a top 4 with the Leafs. And if Minnesota needs to shed salary, they may go the direction of Spurgeon. So it might be a target of opportunity based on those contracts that Minnesota has to get signed.
Then there's Chris Tanev with the Vancouver Canucks. He's got the stability of a saltine cracker. Clearly he's got talent, but do the Leafs want to part with prospects and assets to bring back someone that they're really not guaranteed to get much from, Mike? But he's a name. He's a name, right?
I think, the thing is, I think as a player, he's the perfect fit for what the Leafs are looking for. I mean, and his injury history would mitigate the price that Vancouver would be able to ask for. I mean, he's missed, I think it was like 69 games the last 2 years with a variety of injuries. So, I mean, and he's a shot blocker. He's not a big offensive producer. So the price to get him would be, I think reasonable, but it's also a question of whether Vancouver wants to trade with Toronto. The dynamic of those two polar opposite Canadian cities, and he's a right-hand shot. I think he would fit perfect with Morgan Rielly. He played with Morgan Rielly back in the World Championships in 2016, but it's all a question of how much Vancouver would be looking for in terms of a deal. And I don't think they can realistically ask for a ton, but they might be, because the defensive market is so thin.
Just the thing, Chris Tanev's game would be perfect in Toronto. He as the type of player that he is known to be, is the guy you'd want. But the chance you're taking with him is that clearly he's had injury issues, and just in reading the comment, we have so many astute listeners and followers of the Leafs Convo, especially the really intense conversations you see in our comment section. A lot of people pointing out that, look, Chris Tanev's got game, but he also has a lot of injury issues. So that's the chance you take. What I like, the point you make, Mike, is that if the Leafs don't have to give too much up in order to get him out of Vancouver and put him in a situation where look, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, then, we'll bite the bullet. However, we didn't have to pay an arm and a leg to get him. Then that's the guy you want. The other option is Dan Hamhuis as a free agent.
Yeah, I mean, Hamhuis is somebody. I mean, I look at that situation and say that is one that, I mean, it doesn't cost you anything.
Uh-huh.
He's a veteran. He's a veteran guy. He's 35 years old. The only thing that differentiates him from the first three that you mentioned is that he's left-handed, which would basically mean that you would probably have to keep Ron Hainsey playing the right side, playing his offside. But he played for Babcock and Sochi on the Olympic team. He's 35, but he played over 20 minutes a game last season with Dallas. I mean, he is clearly a top 4 or top 5 defenseman, and it doesn't cost you anything other than money, and the Leafs have a lot of cap space for the upcoming year. So if he was amenable to a 1-year deal at 35 years old, I think that's the way to go.
Slava Voinov is a guy who's in his prime age-wise. He's won cups. A key member of the Los Angeles Kings defensive core for their championship runs, but considering his situation with pleading no contest to domestic abuse and being suspended, it would be a PR nightmare for the Maple Leafs, who play hockey in one of the most forward, advanced social cities on the planet, and it might, impede or obstruct a little bit of the momentum the organization has going, not on the ice, but in terms of the way people feel about it. So what's your take on Slava Voinov? Would they even broach that, or is that something that, you just added to the column to, fill out your top 5?
Well, that's the big question, because, I think some NHL team is going to trade for the rights of Slava Voinov and sign him.
Mm-hmm.
I really do think that someone will. We've seen instances in other sports of players who've had checkered pasts, and I think what he did and what he pleaded no contest to is reprehensible, but there is going to be a team that is going to say, okay, we'll give him a shot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I personally, I don't know whether the Leafs and Kyle Dubas want to spend some of the goodwill that they've incurred on with the Tavares signing and roll the dice. But the thing, I'm strictly on the hockey side of it. He's what they need. He's a right-hand shot defenseman. He's a top 4. He's won 2 Stanley Cups, and he's 28 years old. I mean, if you just take that, you would think, and probably you don't have to pay a lot to get his rights from LA, but whether they want to cross that PR nightmare, as you called it, I don't know.
Well, look what's going on with Roberto Osuna. I mean, he's eligible to return here real soon. Could be one of the best closers in the game for a very long time. And, there are many people out there who are ready to boycott the Blue Jays if he comes anywhere near Rogers Center. So that is the difficulty in this day and age. You want to make your team better, but you don't want to make your team worse. The experience that people have being on your team or supporting your team, the culture around your team, the culture that the fans gin up or can affect negatively through the things you do. It's going to be a tough one. I mean, when it comes to the Leafs, if there's anybody who can help the fan base not reconcile but accept and get through controversy, I believe it's somebody like Kyle Dubas. I mean, he's well ahead of his time. He's an old soul, young man. However, I just don't know if bringing in a Slava Voinov and having to go through the PR ups and downs and the explanations and the, here's what it is 101 type thing is where, first of all, Kyle Dubas needs to be putting his effort at this point. Brendan Shanahan doesn't need to be stepping in to dictate or control that narrative, or he'll look like, he's acting like the older brother, father figure to Kyle Dubas, who's just not sage or wise enough at this point to handle it. So these guys want to stick to hockey, and as you said, they don't want to expend the goodwill that they've created in spades through this John Tavares signing. So to have a Voinov, maybe in a couple of years, if he plays with another team and keeps his nose clean and time goes by and, he's done some things to help better himself and to, make the culture that he's created negatively more positive, then so be it. Maybe that's another thing down the line. Go ahead, Mike.
The overall thing, just to put a capper, the overall thing for the article that I wrote is the Leafs still need to make some improvement, address something on the blue line before the beginning of training camp for them to, I think, be realistically a contender for the Stanley Cup. If it's just Tavares, I think they're improved. They're obviously improved, but their defense is still a liability, and this is still the same defense that cost them in Game 7 against Boston. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Chris Tanev, is he healthy now, or is he in a hospital bed somewhere?
He's healthy, but look at your watch, and maybe in 8 hours he won't be.
If they could get him for next to nothing, he's the guy I'd want to bring in. And you might call me crazy, but if the Vancouver Canucks believe he's either damaged goods or will be damaged goods, and you can get him for a song, which Jim Benning, who knows how inferior he's feeling to Kyle Dubas on any given moment, but if the Leafs could construct some sort of a transaction involving Chris Tanev and sending back something that is palatable and digestible, then he's the guy you want. And if it doesn't work out because he slips and falls down the stairs and is in a coma for a month, then you tried, but you didn't have to pay a lot for it.
I think that Tanev is the type of guy that if the Leafs stand pat with what they have on defense right now, that they may try to acquire at the deadline if they leave cap space open, because then he would have only a year left in his contract, and Vancouver would be in a position probably outside of the playoffs. But I think they need that player, and basically the first half of the season is when you toy around with your lineup, and then at the second half and getting closer to the deadline is when you really have to put that team together that's focused on a lineup and focused on the playoffs. But I really think that they need that top 4 defenseman now, and like I said, we'll see what they do.
I can't wait until March, Mike, when the Leafs bring in Rick Nash and Dan Hamhuis. Okay,
we'll see.
Let's get into Mike's mailbag. Hashtag Ask Mike. Rob Pamanti. Could the Leafs convince Nick Lidstrom out of retirement? He's 48 years old, but still better than the trash left on the FA market. This is a testament to the understanding that the FA market doesn't look so great when it comes to defensemen. The trade market, a lot of these guys would help the Leafs slightly, but it's not exactly what they're looking for, and fans are pointing this out. So facetiously bringing up somebody like Nick Lidstrom, Mike, I mean, is that where we're at right now?
Well, I haven't seen Nick Lidstrom lately, but I'll tell you one thing. I've seen Boreas Salming, and he looks like he could still play. The free agent market, other than him, I mean, like I said, I looked at the available defensemen in free agency, and other than Hamhuis, everyone was an under 20-minute defenseman. There are names like Kevin Bieksa out there, who's a right-hand shot, but he's 37 years old, and I don't think he's anything more than a bottom pairing option. Or Tobias Enstrom. There's not much there. So I really don't think, other than Hamhuis, there's anything in free agency that will help the Leafs. At least it may add veteran depth, but it won't address where they need to address, which is a top 4 D.
I saw a picture of Anders Eriksson on social media the other day. Wonder what he's up to. These Swedes, though, they keep in shape. Matt Sundin looks like he could still score 20, your buddy, the big Swede,
yes.
the Brahma Bull.
Yes.
Anthony McCoy. Clark went from D to forward. Gardner went from forward to D. Given our plethora of wingers, if you're in Babcock's shoes, do you try Brown on the right side?
I mean, honestly, it's like I swear it's descended from Red Kelly switching from defense to center when he went from Detroit to Toronto in the 60s, and everybody comes up with this idea. Let's move Al Iafrate to the wing. I mean, Wendell Clark played defense and he played forward in junior, so the conversion to left wing was not that big of a deal for him. It just doesn't happen. I know Gardner played center in high school. He plays defense like a forward, but he's not a forward anymore, and his value to a team is not shifting him from position to position. And I don't think really I heard somebody say, well, William Nylander would be a great defenseman. No, he wouldn't. He's not a defenseman.
Yeah, that's great.
And neither is Connor Brown. You're going to have to develop your own defenseman or acquire actual defensemen and not convert forwards to defense. This is not fantasy land.
If I'm William Nylander and Mike Babcock comes up to me or DJ Smith and says, "We're making you a defenseman," I'm asking for a trade right away.
Yeah.
PDT at DTriani 10. Hey guys, longtime listener of the Convo. Can we expect a top 2 D-man in return involving a trade with Gardner plus someone in his early to mid-20s that's more a shutdown type of D-man? Believe we only need one of these type players and an addition of a vet D-man for 1 year. So everybody knows the Leafs need defensive help. The Leafs know they need defensive help. The rest of the league knows they need defensive help. Are the Leafs in a poor position to get something done here, Mike? And this will wrap up Ask Mike.
I don't think they're in a poor position, but I mean, the comments that Dubas made last week on TSN radio, where he basically said, well, I'm happy with our defense. That's what you say when, you're not happy with your defense, but you don't want to give ammo to those teams that are shopping defensemen. They'll raise the price, or for defensemen who are on the free agent market, they'll raise their asking price. I mean, I am sure that they're looking to upgrade on the blue line, but they're not going to go out and say that just simply to give the other side leverage. I mean, I'm sure that he's looking for the best deal possible, and we have a long time during the summer. So I think he'll be patient, and he said, I'm going to be patient, and I think they will, but I think eventually they're going to get that top 4D.
Mm-hmm. Does Kyle Dubas want to trade for Chris Tanev now when he's still healthy, or does he want to wait to see if he's still healthy closer to the start of the hockey season, Mike? I'm being sarcastic, but I like the Chris Tanev option. If they can get him for a reasonable price, he's the guy you need. And whether he gets injured or not, you just have to take that risk. But it's not like there's a hell of a lot of other defensemen out there of that same kind of style that you'd want to bring in. You can go ahead and trade for Justin Falk. Yay, fun, another trade. But he's more of the same. A Chris Tanev player is the kind of player you want. I mean, he's injured a lot. You take your risk with it. Slava Voinov, he's the guy you want, but do you want all the baggage too? I don't think so.
Right. The one wild card that I did not include in the top 5, and I'm sort of waiting for the situation to play out, is in Winnipeg with Jacob Trouba. Now, he's a guy. He opted for salary arbitration. He's 2 years away from being a UFA. They, that team, the Jets, have a lot of cap problems with Wheeler and Laine and Hellebuyck, all looking for new deals in the next 2 years. And they might not be able to, if Trouba goes to arbitration and takes a 1 or 2 year deal, that means he's basically angling his way to become an unrestricted free agent in 2 years. And that might be a situation where the Leafs could be interested and might be able to make a deal, but that's a long ways away, and they very easily could sign him to an extension. So I held back because I don't know what the landscape is on a guy like Trouba.
Did you not want to get Shovel Day off and Dubas out for a lunch and a couple of drams and see if you could broker the Myers for Gardner deal we've talked about?
It would make sense for both teams, but I don't know. Tyler Myers was very good for Winnipeg last year. He's a big, rangy guy, and I don't know, whether he's amenable to signing an extension with Winnipeg. I just get the feeling with Gardner, even though he loves it in Toronto and he expressed that a desire to stay there. I just don't think with the free agent class next year, if Karlsson signs an extension, Jake Gardner is probably going to be the highest paid defenseman in free agency, and I just don't think the Leafs are going to sign him for $7 million a year, which is probably what he's going to end up getting.
I love how you call Tyler Myers big and rangy. It's such a compliment within the constructs of the game of hockey. But if you're describing one of your coworkers at the office as big and rangy,
yeah,
it's like, this is my buddy Paul. He's big and rangy. There's going to be somebody's going to be waiting for you in the parking lot.
Yeah, you get slapped in the face when you say big and rangy.
Hey, Mike, before we go, Austin Matthews and John Tavares, we've seen some television footage of these two cats skating together for the first time, both wearing blue and white. Promo shoot, something for the team. I'm not exactly sure what the reason for the two collabing on the ice was, but it looks fantastic. And, of course, the narrative attached to these two on the ice together is, well, it looks like they're all right with one another. I know that you and I are going to avoid this nonsense and avoid trying to gin up a quiet Cold War between these two, other than dismissing a lot of that stupidity that just doesn't need to be there. And I think it's kind of lazy journalism if anybody's even bringing it up. What did you think of seeing those two on the ice, and then most recently on TSN just after the World Cup that I know that you were just so focused on, Croatia and England? John Tavares is out on the ice booting around. He looks fantastic. He looks big and strong and blue, and he's going to 100 points. I'm telling you. Austin Matthews is watching his every move from just off the ice. What did you think of that? Nice stuff?
Yeah, I can understand that why Leaf fans would get excited seeing Tavares in blue and white, and also seeing Matthews either on the ice or watching him. It's like, I mean, honestly, if you look at this objectively, Austin Matthews should be the happiest person that John Tavares is there. It's going to make his job easier. He's going. There's very possibly, the matchups. He's not going to face Patrice Bergeron every night when they play the Boston Bruins, because he may get faced up with David Krejci because Tavares is there. It's going to be a nightmare for other teams to check both number one centers, and that could open it up for Matthews to score 40, 50 goals. So I don't think that this was a bad thing. I don't think, Matthews was part of the process to get Tavares. He talked to him as part of the wooing process. Mm-hmm. So I think all this stuff about them being competitive with each other, I mean, I'm sure there's competitiveness, but them being acrimonious toward each other. So, yeah, exactly. I don't think that's the case at all.
Well, I'm surprised Aaron Judge let Giancarlo Stanton join the Yankees, to be honest with you, because the Yankees only need one slugger, and that's and that's Aaron Judge. And Big Papi and Manny Ramirez together in Boston, I don't know how that worked for so long, because it was Big Papi's team. Right, Mike? We're going to hear the comparisons of Tavares and Matthews for a long time. If it's in-house and it's for fun, great. I think they're different types of players. And there are those who have fallen in love with Austin Matthews because he's so fresh-faced, he's so hip, and he's got a great wrist shot. And that's terrific, and I love you for it. But let's not start elevating his game and his stature and his ability over someone like John Tavares just because he's 6 years younger. John Tavares was also a first overall pick, and John Tavares had to deal with some of the in terms of a preamble, in terms of hype, and in terms of just intense scrutiny. The hype around John Tavares through his Bantam years and becoming an exceptional player and going to the OHL at 14 mirrored what Sidney Crosby had to go through and what Wayne Gretzky had to go through. Last word to you, Mike, and then we got a wrapper.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's definitely exciting for the Leafs, and also the fact that now you have a 30-goal scorer, two-time 30-goal scorer, Nazem Kadri as your third-line center. So that trio is going to be the key to the Leafs'
apparently he's
success or failure.
Mike. Sorry, people don't like when I cut you off, but people listen. Apparently, Nazem Kadri, John Tavares' former line mate in London, who spoke to him as soon as Tavares signed the deal. Apparently, he's mad too because he's going to lose ice time. These guys want to win a championship now. That's what they want to do, and that is what they're going to do. Last word to you now, Mike. I'm not going to cut you off.
Yeah, so, well, I mean, the point I was going to make was that, that trio is going to be the big key, but it doesn't mean that they don't have to improve in other areas. And that's, again, I think the focus for the next 2 months before training camp opens in Niagara Falls in mid-September is going to be who is on the blue line. And if there is another defenseman that they can get, I think that Kyle Dubas needs to do that.
Box of saltine crackers from Toronto to Vancouver, Chris Tanev from Van City to the 6th. Michael, have a good one, buddy.
Thanks, Norman.
Not a bad little podcast right there. If you want to continue the Leafs dialogue with us on social media, go ahead and do it. @IamSportsHeart, at Mike and Buffalo, at the Leafs Convo, and we are off to the races. Our good friend Kyle Outridge, our prospect watcher and bird dog, is doing a really nice job profiling the Leafs' recent draft picks. His series is called The Take. You can find it in the playlist section on our YouTube channel. Go along for the journey with Kyle. You'll come out of it a more informed fan and get a real exciting understanding of what's in the pipeline with these Maple Leafs. They have a great team on the ice with the Leafs. The Calder Cup champion Marlies are terrific too, but there are cats just putting on that jersey for the first time who are eager and gunning for an opportunity to rep the biggest hockey club on the planet. Last thing before I go, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Once we hit 1,000 subscribers, we're going to scramble them up and do a draw. We're going to pick 10 winners of Leafs Convo shirts from TLC Apparel. It's going to be so much fun. If you think we're doing well right now, you just wait. We have so much more in store. For Mike Augello, I'm Norman James. Thanks for listening to the Leafs Convo. We'll talk to you again real soon. Peace.